Kate.
Hi, Micah.
How are ya?
I'm doing pretty good.
Oh, I'm good. It's good to be in the neighborhood.
Yes, it is.
Oh, so we're sitting in a different spot than usual.
Yes, we are.
Yeah, and there's this branch here on this banner, and that's really makes a lot of sense now that I think about it, considering what we're going to be reading today. We've been doing a lot of stuff from the New Testament.
Yes, we have.
We're going to do a passage that is one that we don't hear very often, and very rarely do we talk about. But when we were looking at it, we thought, even though we're not going to be using it on Sunday, it's part of the lectionary text, and it's something. I think it can teach us something.
I think so.
So we are today in Ezekiel chapter 17, verses 22 to 24. And, well, I tell you what. Shall we just read it once? It's very short. I think you'll sit back and enjoy it, because this is some of the most poetic stuff you'll ever hear.
This is what the sovereign Lord says. I myself will take a shoot from the very top of the cedar and plant it. I will break off a tender sprig from its topmost shoots and plant it on a high and lofty mountain. On the mountain heights of Israel, I will plant it. It will produce branches and bear fruit and become a splendid cedar. Birds of every kind will nest in it. They will find shelter in the shade of its branches. All the trees of the field will know that I, the Lord, bring down the tall trees and make the low trees tall. I dry up the green trees and make the dry trees flourish. I, the Lord, have spoken, and I will do it.
So I'm gonna call you out a little bit. The first time we read this, Kate went, "What? Why on earth would we talk about this one today?" But I think it helps both to hear about who Ezekiel is talking to in this situation, to help us maybe hear how this could actually be speaking to us too today. So if you remember, Ezekiel is talking to God's people, and they are, well, do you remember where they are, Kate?
They are in exile in Babylon.
Exile in Babylon, where they're not where their homes were. They've been, to keep talking about trees, they've been uprooted and planted in a place that isn't their own, with people that aren't their own, and they're feeling very vulnerable. And even in the midst of all this, they're wondering, well, is God still with us? And all this sort of thing. And Ezekiel, he's actually just gotten done before this. Way before that, he says, hey, you're still breaking God's covenant. You're still breaking the covenant that we made with God. You're screwing it all up. He actually calls them some names. And then says, but hold on. God remembers God's covenant. Even when you forget it, God is still going to lift you up, still going to love you. And then we come to this passage, and this is one of Ezekiel's prophecies, one of these words that said God says, speak this, and Ezekiel says, okay, I'm going to speak it. And Ezekiel usually unpacks him a little bit, but this passage, he really doesn't.
No, he doesn't. Which,
actually, I think make it really useful for the people who are hearing it first, and for us now. And we're going to talk about this in a way that it's not necessarily, there's no definitive answer. What does this mean? But I think it can be meaningful for us. So let's start here. What is God doing? What literally does God do in this passage?
Well, he's being a gardener and kind of, not quite transplanting, but it's making something new.
Yeah, there's something new going on here, isn't there? There's that God's gonna, so a cedar tree, really big, tall. We hear in the Bible again and again, the cedars of Lebanon are beautiful and tall, and God is strong and can knock them down, and they're making the temple doors, all sorts of stuff about the cedars. But God takes a branch that big? No.
Tiny.
A tiny little. In my translation, it says it's a tender, vulnerable little shoot, a sprig, so small you can't even call it a branch. The kind of thing that, if you've ever been out in Colorado, you'll see cedar shoots, pine shoots that's what the deer go for, because they're so soft and just, well, they're vulnerable. And God says, okay, I'm going to snip the top of this tree, this vulnerable little piece. What? Is God literally just being a gardener in this, do you think?
He's going to plant it.
Going to plant this shoot. Vulnerable shoot. Being taken and planted somewhere. Who might... I tell you what, let's think about this metaphorically. What are some people or things that we might think of as vulnerable or as tender shoots that we might dismiss a little easily and quickly? What do you guys think of?
Kids.
Oh, kids. Yeah, I think of kids too like that, and sometimes I'll think of folks that I work with at Mosaic.
People with disabilities.
People with disabilities, or even sometimes our elders, the folks who are maybe not as green and vibrant as they used to be, but they're still maybe on the very tip of that tree and can be dismissed a little bit quickly, or thought of as vulnerable or easily chewed on by deer or whatever. And what is God is not taking the whole big, strong, young, beautiful tree and transplanting it.
No, just a little piece of it.
You know what I sometimes think of as a little piece of me that's vulnerable and broken and easily just ignored and stepped on. I think of my depression that way sometimes. It's something that can really, I don't think of as important, or if it's important, it's not important in a very good way. It's just this little tiny piece, but it can be easily dismissed. But there's also other parts of us that are tender, aren't there? Places that we go, ooh, I don't know if I want to touch that part of me.
I don't want to think about that.
I don't want to think about that. So those little things that God is taking, and what's He doing with them again?
He's planting them.
And it says on a high mountain, and we know that's probably talking about Mount Zion, Jerusalem, the place that God does God's work. And so these tender shoots are planted on a mountain, and then what happens to them?
Should I read it?
Why don't you read it?
All right. On the mountain heights of Israel, I will plant it. It will produce branches and bear fruit and become a splendid cedar.
Ooh, perfect. So God's going to take all those broken things and make them beautiful. The end, right?
No. Not quite.
Not quite. Well, what else is there?
It says, birds of every kind will nest in it. They will find shelter in the shades of its branches.
So, hold on. God can take the vulnerable, the tender, and maybe the parts that we dismiss quickly as well, maybe they're tasty or whatever, but they're not that important. and grow them into a big, beautiful, amazing thing. And it's not just for us to grow that way, is it?
No, it's to help others.
To help others. Just some others, though. Just the peacocks and the cardinals and the occasional penguin, right? Not all the birds, just some of them.
No.
Oh,
All the birds.
all the birds. Whoa.
Including ostriches.
Ostriches. Can you imagine an ostrich nesting in a tree?
No, I can't.
I mean, I can. It's kind of funny, but
All the birds.
all the birds.
Even the ones we don't like. Or don't get along with very well.
Ugh, blue jays. I tell you, they're
welcome too, Micah.
they're welcome too. Whoa. Kate, I think this is a challenging passage.
I think so.
I think that it may be challenging us and maybe everyone in the neighborhood.
I think so.
What do you think it's challenging us to do?
That we are something, not nothing.
We're something that God can use.
Can use for good and to help those around us.
That even those places, I can say from my depression standpoint, that's a piece of me that I actually use to serve and love other people more than I would have ever imagined. I wonder what pieces of you are tender or broken or maybe easily dismissed that you can recognize God can take that, plant it and use it and grow it for you and for
those around us.
All the birds. Wow. I think it's going to be a pretty cool neighborhood with all those trees.
I think
Birds. Well, neighbor, we will see you